Joe Biden accused of fueling the fire of war by Russia as Ukraine gets the green light to use US-made missiles. With North Korean troops joining Russian forces, Biden's move is being seen as a last-ditch attempt to give relief to Ukraine. This as he joins other world leaders for the final time at the G20 summit in Brazil.
We must double down on our support for Ukraine. Tomorrow is day 1,000 of the conflict. That's 1,000 days of aggression from Russia and 1,000 days of sacrifice from Ukraine.
Russia says the outgoing president is throwing fuel on the fire by allowing the use of American missiles, leading to delicate conversations over at the G20 about what could happen next. We'll be live in Brazil tonight, also on the programme. She had a restraining order against her husband, then her body was found in a car. The international manhunt for the husband of Harshita Brella. In our special report, the Housing Secretary tells us she wants to see the biggest number of council and social homes built under Labour. A row between Band Aid and Ed Sheeran over the reuse of his vocals for the 40th anniversary version of the song. And better late than never. After sitting in storage for 5 years, Harry Kane's statue gets its moment in the spotlight.
This is the ITV Evening News with Charlene White.
Good evening. The Prime Minister tonight threw his full support behind Ukraine, saying the West cannot allow Putin to win the war. Speaking from the meeting of the G20 leading nations in Brazil, Sir Keir Starmer said the allies need to make sure Ukraine has what it needs for as long as necessary. It came as the Kremlin denounced Joe Biden for finally allowing Ukraine to use US missiles deep in Russian territory. President Putin's spokesperson said that added fuel to the fire of the conflict. But Sir Keir wouldn't say whether he would allow Ukraine to use UK-supplied Storm Shadow missiles inside Russia. From the summit in Rio, here's our political editor, Robert Peston.
President Biden's last hurrah with global leaders, but he's not done yet. Weeks before he hands over to Donald Trump, he's finally given permission to Ukraine to fire American ATACMS missiles into Russia.
Ukraine. The United States strongly supports Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Everyone around this table in my view should as well.
So will Sir Keir Starmer also let President Zelensky direct British-supplied Storm Shadow missiles at Russian and North Korean troops who are outside Ukraine in Kursk.
We must double down on our support for Ukraine. Tomorrow is day 1,000 of the conflict. That's 1,000 days of aggression from Russia and 1,000 days of sacrifice from Ukraine. So that is my clear message here. It's number one on my agenda. Obviously, I'm not going to get into operational details because the only winner, if we were to do that, is Putin, and I'm not prepared to do that.
Not a categoric yes, then, from Starmer. As for President Putin, he stayed away from Rio, perhaps fearful of being arrested. He hasn't responded to Biden's increased military support for Kyiv, but his spokesman said America is adding fuel to the fire and escalating tensions. But tensions are already at breaking point, especially after this weekend's Russian strikes that led to yet more civilian deaths in Ukraine. President Zelensky didn't preempt formal authorization from the US, the UK and also possibly France in respect of its missiles. He simply said strikes are not made with words, such things are not announced, the missiles will speak for themselves. Glory to Ukraine. Slava Ukraini. The Defence Secretary told MPs why Ukraine needs more help from us now.
The one person responsible for escalation in this conflict is President Putin, that he's escalated his illegal war against Ukraine by intensifying the use of glide bombs, by destroying Ukraine's energy infrastructure. This is a very serious development that I'm discussing with the US Defence Secretary, and we'll be doing so this evening with the Ukrainian Defence Secretary too.
An important first encounter for Starmer with arguably the world's most powerful leader, China's President Xi. Starmer stressed the importance of honouring the rule of law, which Putin ignores. It's a message to China. Stop helping Moscow. Robert Peston, ITV News at the G20 in Rio de Janeiro.
Well, let's talk now about these weapons and let's talk about how they could change the course of the conflict. Our correspondent John Ray is here with the details. John.
Thanks, Charlene. Coming up to 1,000 days of war. And this story follows a familiar trajectory, as with Western battle tanks and modern warplanes, and now permission to use long-range missiles deep inside Russia. Ukraine has been made to wait again for the military help it needs. This time, the Army Tactical Missile System, a formidable weapon. It travels at 2,300 miles an hour. It's deadly accurate and hard to intercept. And with a range of 186 miles, it can hit targets like supply routes, ammunition depots and military bases far beyond the front lines. Still, reports say the US is still blocking the use of Britain's Storm Shadow missiles within Russia. They have a range of 155 miles, but require some US technology to work fully. So why has America changed tack now, when for months Russia has been winning, making slow but relentless progress across the east? Well, the latest signs, the early signs are that these new missiles will be deployed around Kursk, the Russian province occupied by Ukraine since August, where thousands of North Korean troops are expected to take part in Moscow's counterattack. That seems finally to have forced the issue.
If Ukraine can use these long-range missiles to inflict a heavy cost on North Korea, this could dissuade Pyongyang from sending more. And it could also help Ukraine keep its territory inside Russia, in Kursk, for longer. And that also would serve as a very valuable bargaining chip in any negotiations that might occur.
Now, some critics say Joe Biden has acted too slowly, that he'll supply too few missiles. But President Trump takes office in just 2 months' time. Perhaps these missiles will give extra leverage to America and leave President Zelensky in a stronger position for any peace talks to come. Charlene.
OK, thanks very much, John. Well, let's go now to Washington and our US correspondent, Dan Rivers. Dan, tensions rising between East and West. In the background, as John mentioned, is Donald Trump and what he may well do once he's in power.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the Biden administration are all too aware that there is this sort of narrowing window, if you like, of opportunity to try something new in Ukraine. There's just 63 days left of the Biden administration. So they have green-lighted the use of this ATACMS missile system, with restrictions, though, around precisely where and when it might be used. We haven't heard anything officially yet. There's a State Department briefing going on as I speak to you. This hasn't come up yet, but clearly they're aware that this will be seen as being provocative. But I think it's a calculated risk that they know, that the Russians know, that Donald Trump is going to be coming in soon and may have a completely different agenda, if you like, when it comes to Ukraine. In the past, Donald Trump has talked about ending the conflict within 24 hours of coming to office. So I think they've taken this calculated gamble that this might give the Ukrainians some tactical advantage. I think they're particularly concerned about the deployment of North Koreans around that Kursk bit of Russia that Ukraine is currently occupying, and they feel that this is a gamble worth taking. There's no sign at the moment, though, that this is going to lead to the UK Storm Shadow missiles being deployed, and Germany's already said its Taurus system will not be supplied to Ukraine.
OK, Dan, thanks very much. And to Rio now, and our political editor, Robert Peston, who's with the Prime Minister tonight. And Robert, although Ukraine dominated proceedings there, Sir Keir also met with China's presidents, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, let's be absolutely clear. This is an incredibly important first G20 summit for the British Prime Minister. And just picking up very briefly on one thing that John Ray just said, Keir Starmer plainly in the camp of wanting to reinforce President Zelensky's hands for those peace negotiations we do expect when President Trump takes office in January. And I thought to an extent there was something coded in what Prime Minister Starmer said to President Xi today in his very first meeting with the leader of China, the world's second biggest economy, arguably the most powerful leader in the world, given, you know, he's got no internal challenge, President Xi. He said to President Xi that Britain is a great believer in following the rule of law. Of course, you know, anybody listening to that thinks, oh, well, Putin, of course, is the great breaker of international law, and Britain would dearly like China to stop giving the degree of support that is currently lending to Moscow. Apart from all of that, though, Starmer wants money from China. He wants investment. He said today that his chancellor would be meeting with her opposite number in China. He hopes. I have to say it's tricky to get investment from China because there are all sorts of security concerns around Chinese investments. They're not allowed to invest in nuclear. They're not allowed to invest in telecommunications and media technology. So precisely where he's going to get this money, where he's going to put this money from China is anybody's guess.
OK, Robert, thanks very much. To other news now, and an international manhunt is underway for a husband suspected of murdering his wife before fleeing the country. The body of 24-year-old Harshita Brella was found in the boot of a car in East London last week. Northamptonshire police have named her husband, Pankaj Lamba, as the prime suspect. Harshita had been living in Corby. Our Midlands correspondent Stacey Foster is at the police headquarters in Kettering for us tonight. Stacey, what's the latest on the investigation?
Well, we know there are now over 60 officers working on this investigation, trying to trace the man that they believe killed Harshita Brella in Northamptonshire earlier this month. We know that police were called last Wednesday by a member of the public who was concerned about her welfare when they arrived at her home and she didn't answer the door. A missing persons investigation was launched, and those inquiries very quickly led them to a road in Ilford, some 93 miles away, where her body was found in the boot of a car. Last night, police said they believed that she had been murdered by her husband, Pankaj Lamba. They released a photograph of him, and they said that they believe that he has now fled the country. Well, we've been speaking to neighbours who live near the couple today, and they said they're shocked by what has happened.
But we didn't know what it was. We thought it was a house further down the street. We seen it looked like a forensic team or something in white gear, and then loads of men with cameras pointing down this way. See it online that this young girl was murdered, and obviously naturally you're a bit worried because you don't know what's happened, you don't know why it's happened.
Police have confirmed that Harshita was the victim of domestic violence. They said that as recently as September, she was made the subject of a domestic violence protection order in the courts. And it's because of that previous contact that they have had with her that Northamptonshire Police has made a referral now to the Independent Office for Police Conduct. Now, Harshita's sister has been in touch with us tonight. She said that she wants justice for her sister, but the man who is suspected of murdering her is still on the run.
OK, Stacey, thanks very much. A £10,000 reward is being offered by detectives investigating the suspected murder of a father and son who disappeared in Spain 5 years ago. Sussex police are reviewing calls for information into missing father Daniel Paul and son Liam Paul. They were last seen travelling in Malaga in 2019. A father of four who made a TikTok video threatening to burn down every mosque in Newcastle has been jailed. James Aspin from Northumberland posted what a judge called a hugely offensive and dangerous 4-minute video on August the 8th, shortly after the Southport stabbings. He was sentenced to 20 months in prison. 750,000 women across the UK are waiting for vital NHS gynaecological appointments, with some in unbearable pain. But that could just be a snapshot of the problem, with thousands more women likely to be waiting for other care and tests. That's the alarming findings of the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynaecologists, which is calling for the issue to be taken more seriously. Chloe Keedy heard from some of the women who are suffering in silence.
Leaving a full-time job in finance to pursue a career in making music might sound like the stuff of dreams. But for Leonie, it was the result of a living nightmare, brought on by the devastating symptoms of gynecological conditions, which mean that some days she simply can't leave the house.
There's not a day I don't wake up without pain, and it affects me all over my body. It's crippling pelvic pain, contractions of the uterus, squeezing, burning. When I have a flare-up, it's just diabolical and I can't function. I don't feel like I'm on this planet.
Leonie was 13 when she first experienced symptoms of endometriosis and adenomyosis, where tissue grows both outside and into the wall of the uterus. But getting a diagnosis took more than 20 years.
It was devastating, to be honest. You feel like you're going crazy a little bit. You think, well, you start to question your own reality, and it's like, you know what you're feeling, but there's no answer for this pain.
Leonie is one of more than 750,000 women and people currently waiting for hospital treatment for serious gynecological conditions, a number that's doubled since before the pandemic. According to a survey, more than 2/3 say they can't do day-to-day activities, including work, and increasing numbers are having to resort to A&E, with emergency hospital admissions up by 1/3 in 3 years.
There are a whole lot of women out there in the community, in primary care, who are even waiting to ask for help from their general practitioners. They are then referred to secondary care. So you can imagine the extent of the problem. I think we are just seeing the tip of the iceberg.
But as a consultant in sexual and reproductive health, Dr. Janet Barter sees firsthand how already overstretched services are struggling to provide the care patients need.
On the ground as clinicians, we've got to be better at helping women to understand their conditions and seeing the different options. At trust level, I think we really have to see women's health as more important. And at government level, yes, there does need to be more investment in women's health, all aspects of women's health.
But the longer it takes, the longer women like Leonie will live with excruciating pain. Chloe Keedy, ITV News.
Well, there's plenty more to come in the ITV Evening News, including the new allegations of inappropriate behaviour levelled at former BBC presenter Hugh Edwards, an investigation into how thieves broke into Windsor Castle while the royal family slept, and energy prices are to rise again. That and more coming up after the break. Welcome back. ITV News has learned of fresh allegations of inappropriate behaviour about former BBC presenter Hugh Edwards. A teenager who was a sixth form pupil at the time has told us the former broadcaster tried to groom him by sending suggestive messages and inviting him for a tour of the BBC newsroom. Edwards was given a 6-month suspended sentence in September after admitting at making indecent images of children. And a warning that this special investigative report from Nest Jenkins contains details of the alleged grooming, which you may find upsetting.
Hugh Edwards, once the celebrated BBC presenter, since September a convicted sex offender. But now new allegations have emerged of inappropriate behaviour by the former broadcaster against a young man who was an 18-year-old sixth form pupil at the time. They met during a community concert where Emir, not his real name, was performing in his school uniform. He says that Edwards complimented his performance and told him to reach out to him on Instagram.
I wouldn't have spoken to him or kept in touch with him in any way if he wasn't a good contact. And by good contact, I mean someone who had interesting or powerful connections in London.
In one conversation they had, Edwards complimented another musician, referring to him as very good and being one of the highlights. He goes on to say, "Next time, it's you, babe."
The way he would send kisses and things, something small was sceptical in me, but I just thought it was probably just calm. You know, I was 18, there was something a little bit strange about it.
Emir says that Edwards, who was 40 years older than him, was keen to help him with his musical career and invited him for a tour of the BBC building in London. Before the visit, Edwards asked Emir if he knew where London was. He responded with, "Just double-checking you know where you work." Edwards then said, "Yeah, OK, big boy, we believe you."
He introduced me as a musician to various colleagues. He wanted to try and host me. I didn't really understand what the aim was at the time.
But the promised concerts and contacts never came through, and shortly after the visit, the communication between them came to an end, with Edwards unfollowing Emir on Instagram. Dr. Nia Williams is a psychologist specialising in children and young people's mental health.
I would classify this as a form of grooming. In terms of the symbol, the hearts, the kisses, when you look at the promises and when you look at the type of language that was used, that was very unprofessional.
Although Emir's claims are unrelated to the crimes Hugh Edwards was convicted of 3 months ago, it's now made him question the former broadcaster's real intentions with him.
I'm very grateful that nothing worse happened with him. It's because I wasn't the right type of target for him, you know. I think he was trying with me to see if it could be what he was looking for, and I don't think it was. Just manipulative completely.
We tried to contact Hugh Edwards several times to respond to Emir's claims, but we heard nothing back.
The BBC says it has robust safeguarding processes and policies in place. If people contact them directly with concerns about their protocols, they look at these carefully in line with the BBC's complaints framework.
They say they're appalled by Hugh Edwards' crimes and that he's betrayed not just the BBC, but audiences who put their trust in him. An independent review is currently underway to strengthen their workplace culture, which focuses on preventing abuse of power and ensuring everyone at the BBC conducts themselves in line with their values. Hugh Edwards was once the man who read the headlines. By now, he's making them. Ness Jenkins, ITV News.
And if you're watching in Wales, you can watch the full programme tonight at 8 o'clock. Masked burglars have stolen farm vehicles from inside the Windsor Castle estate as the Prince and Princess of Wales stayed in the grounds with their family. Police are investigating the theft, which took place last month. Well, our royal editor, Chris Shipp, is at the estate for us tonight. Chris, just how serious a security breach is this?
Well, you know, Charlene, I think most people will feel a little surprised that anyone can breach the security at somewhere like Windsor Castle. But what happened here, according to local police, didn't happen at the Henry VIII gate, as it's known behind me. It happened on the other side of the estate. It's a farm gate. It's called Shaw Farm Gate. But it is an entrance and an exit that is used from time to time by members of the royal family. And Thames Valley Police said that at 11:45 one Sunday night, intruders managed to get in, steal 2 vehicles, a pickup and a quad bike, and drive them out through the barriers that have since had to be repaired. Now, we know the King and Queen were not here at the time, but William and Kate were, along with their 3 children, George, Charlotte and Louis. They attend a school and would have been preparing to go to school in Ascot the following day on Monday morning. And that's led to questions about whether or not they were under any risk at all. Now, given that we had an intruder in Windsor earlier this year in February, and then again there was that case a few years ago, the man who managed to get in here and threatened to say he wanted to kill the Queen with a crossbow, it does raise questions about whether everything is all right with security here. Now, I've spoken to those who know how everything works here in terms of the security, and they say there are many layers. There's not just the perimeter, of course, but there are many layers until you get to the royal residences where members of the royal family stay. But, you know, whilst the King is here tonight, I think there will be some kind of assessment of what happened at this particular gate. Particularly, you know, this is one of the most famous residences for the royal family in the world.
OK, Chris, thanks very much. So Keir Starmer has said that the vast majority of farmers will not be affected by changes to inheritance tax rules. Protests are due to be staged this week by farmers in response to the inheritance tax reform. Speaking at the G20 summit, the Prime Minister said he understood the concerns of farmers, but said they would be supported with money from the budget. Tottenham player Rodrigo Bentancur has been banned from 7 games by the Football Association for allegedly using a racial slur on a TV show in Uruguay in June. He has been fined £10,000 and ordered to take part in an education programme. A third person has been charged following an incident at Stonehenge in which orange powder was sprayed on the ancient site during a Just Stop Oil protest. Luke Watson, who is 35, has been charged with aiding and abetting damage to a protected monument. He's due to appear at Salisbury Magistrates Court next month. Energy prices are set to rise again in the new year in another blow for household finances. The decision will be announced later on this week. Well, our business editor, Joel Hills, has joined us with more on this. And Joel, it's widely expected that the energy price cap will go even higher from January.
Yeah, look, it's the time of year, isn't it, when people tend to reach for the thermostat, and it's obviously bad news that the unit price of gas and electricity is set to rise again. But I think the really bad news here is that the forecasts suggest that it's likely to remain higher actually for longer. If we have a look at what's going to happen on the 1st of January, this is according to Cornwall Insight. They've crunched the numbers here. The average home in the UK will pay £1,736 a year for the gas and electricity they consume. That's a rise in the Ofgem energy price cap of around 1% or £19. That's significantly below, though, the £4,200 a year that we saw way back in January 2023. A price, of course, no one actually paid because the government subsidised all those bills using the energy price guarantee. But if you go back to October 2021, so before Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which spiralled, sent sort of prices spiralling to outer space, the average price was £1,200 a year. So the reason energy prices are remaining elevated is because, bluntly, of the conflicts that are taking place in the Ukraine and in the Middle East. We're in a situation where European nations are trying to wean themselves off their dependence on Russian gas. Russia, a huge oil and gas exporter. And, of course, the market price of gas and electricity is much higher than it would otherwise be because there's ongoing concerns about what actually will happen in the months to come and whether the supply of gas and oil will be disrupted.
OK, John, thanks very much. We're watching the ITV Evening News. It is just after 7 o'clock. Here's what's still ahead. 2 Met police officers are suspended and charged with sexual assault. Ed Sheeran says he didn't authorise Band Aid to use his vocals in its new release.
I'll be live at the very wet premiere of one of the most highly anticipated films of the year, Wicked Part 1, chatting with the stars Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo.
And out of storage, the widely rejected Harry Kane statue finds a new home on the bench.
And yellow weather warnings are currently in place, but who is impacted and how much snow can we anticipate? I'll have all the details and the full forecast a little later in the programme.
But first, the Housing Secretary, Angela Rayner, has told ITV News she wants to see the biggest number of council and social homes built under her government. But she couldn't say when that will happen or put a number on it. She was quizzed by our investigations editor, Daniel Hewitt, who over the past 4 years has highlighted the scandalous state of social housing right across the country. He's now compiled his award-winning work into a podcast called The Trapped, which follows the stories of tenants who are often powerless to act. And the crisis is made all the worse by the chronic shortage of social housing, which the government has pledged to address. Here's Daniel's special report.
Piercing the South London skyline, nothing of this 60s high-rise hinted at the horrors inside.
Because the mould is everywhere.
This is all mould.
This is all mould.
It looks like there's been a fire. Almost 4 years ago, we stepped into a council flat in Croydon and onto the sodden floors of forgotten families, left to rot like the walls around them.
Told them! I told them!
It opened the floodgates as tenants from across the country contacted ITV News with their stories of squalid, unsafe housing. Now, a new podcast series exposes the scale of the crisis. Come with me behind the closed doors and see for yourself the country that you really live in.
So this is the flat.
And almost 4 years on, the emails still keep coming.
My room and my daughter's room.
Okay. Jodie has lived in this flat for 11 years with her 3 children and her mum, who has cancer. It is owned by Peabody Housing Association.
Damp and mould, the toilet breaking constantly, the lift breaking constantly, the water not working.
She says she reported issues for years and that the conditions have made her children ill.
It's been 4 years of just constant hell. They was getting sick all the time. They had chest infections, ended up in hospital with bronchiolitis and all those kind of things.
They were eventually moved out in February this year for repairs to be carried out and are currently living elsewhere in temporary accommodation paid for by Peabody. But Jodie didn't trust that the work was being done, so she set up a camera in the kitchen and found the contractor that Peabody had sent rummaging through their possessions, including Jodie's underwear drawer and old purses.
Just don't think someone's going to come into your home and violate the way this person did. And then to not, it's just, I can't even put it into words. It's absolutely mind-blowing that I had to beg them for an apology. People in social housing just need to be heard. That's all we want, is to be heard.
A Peabody spokesperson told us the actions of the contractor were completely unacceptable. He was sacked and Jodie was paid compensation. They say they are doing all they can to provide the family with a new property and have now offered them a 3-bedroom house. But what of those estates we first visited almost 4 years ago?
Oh, wow.
On the Eastfields estate in South London, we found squalor on an industrial scale, disrepair going back decades, across 500 homes owned by Clarion Housing Association.
And the mouse come from this hole.
What, the mouse come through here?
Yeah.
So is this cement?
Yes, it's cement.
Did you do this?
Yeah, I do it.
We also met Christopher and Maria, who feared for their safety in their broken home.
They don't seem to care about the tenants, as long as they get the rent money every month.
Clarion apologised and carried out repairs across this estate, which we've now returned to see for ourselves.
Following our report here, the law changed so that estates like Eastfields can be properly inspected and tenants' views, in theory, taken more seriously. I'm back to visit Maria and Christopher to see if, in practice, that is the case.
Hello, how you doing?
Nice to see you again, Dan.
Good to see you, Maria.
Have things improved since we were last here?
Feels a lot better, but it's still a bit unnerving because you never know when it's going to happen again. You get up in the morning, you'll be getting more leaks, or something else has happened, and well, this is where we find out now if anything serious does happen, that they're going to be quick to fix it.
We just hope that it's made them think twice about letting people down, the tenants down.
Progress, perhaps, but the ultimate problem remains a chronic shortage of social homes. I asked the new Housing Secretary how she plans to fix it.
I've already spoke to local authorities and mayors about how we can make sure that their funding and the Chancellor of how we can look through the spending review to ensure that those homes are being built and that we have the council and social homes we desperately need.
How many? Because Shelter and other charities consistently say 90,000 a year are needed in England.
I want to see the biggest in a generation of council and social homes built.
This tower block we first stepped inside almost 4 years ago now stands empty. After our report, tenants voted to demolish the entire estate. A new one will now be built. But that will take years, and time is one thing tenants trapped in Britain's housing crisis do not have.
Now, you've been reporting on this for 4 years now, Dan. Do you think we'll ever see change with this new government?
They're saying the right thing, Charlene. I mean, if you look at the investigation and the podcast series, what we touch upon, the appalling conditions, or whether it's increasing use of temporary accommodation, the record number of children who are becoming homeless, those numbers of people being evicted from the private renter sector going up, all roads really lead back to the same ultimate problem, which is this chronic shortage of affordable homes, in particular in social homes. Now, as you heard in that interview, I tried to push Angela Rayner on how many social homes Labour plan to build. They have said they're going to build 1.5 million homes in total over the course of this Parliament, that is roughly 300,000 a year. The last time that was achieved, for some context, was 1977. And in 1977, we were building loads of social homes, particularly council homes. The only way Labour are going to hit its targets here of house building is to invest in social housing. But right now, they are being remarkably unspecific about their plans for social housing. Within the sector, all eyes are very much now on the spending review in the spring. That is when they say Labour really has to put its money where its mouth is here. If they want to build the biggest number of social homes in a generation, I mean, frankly, that wouldn't be difficult because we've barely built any. We're still selling them off. We're still demolishing them. But March really will be the time when I think Labour will be judged. So far, saying the right things, but we'll wait till the spring.
OK, Dan, thanks very much. Well, you can listen to all the episodes on the website, thetrapped.co.uk, or wherever you get your podcasts. OK, let's get an update on what's making the news tonight. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, says the West cannot allow Putin to win the war in Ukraine as he meets with other world leaders at the G20 in Brazil. His comments come as Joe Biden allowed Ukraine to start using US missiles in Russia, a move the Kremlin has denounced. The sister of Harshita Brella says she wants justice for the 24-year-old whose body was found in a car boot in East London. More than 60 police officers are now working on this case, trying to track down Ms Brella's husband, Pankaj Lamba, who they believe killed her before fleeing the country. Two serving Met police officers have been charged with 4 counts of sexual assault. The pair were off duty at the time of the alleged offences in central London earlier this year. They've now been suspended from the Met. Olivia Guthrie is at Scotland Yard for us. Olivia, can you talk us through the background to these allegations?
Well, Charlene, these 2 officers are charged with 4 counts of sexual assault against a woman while they were off duty, as you say. The Met say that the alleged offences took place at a venue in central London on April the 21st. 41-year-old Jerome Beasley and Luke Robinson, who's 39, are currently suspended from duty and they're due to appear on Wednesday at Westminster Magistrates Court. Now, the Metropolitan Police have been under increased scrutiny in recent years over alleged offences against women. Last year, the force announced it was reviewing 1,600 cases of alleged sexual and domestic abuse among Metropolitan Police officers and members of staff. Now, ITV News have been in touch with Scotland Yard today, but they say they won't be making any further comment.
Thanks very much, Olivia. Davina McCall has left intensive care in her recovery from brain surgery. She had a 14mm wide benign tumour removed last week. Her partner says that she has made an enormous leap forward in the last 24 hours. London South Bank has been transformed into the Emerald City tonight. The premiere of the movie version of long-running hit musical Wicked. The film is set to be one of the biggest blockbusters of the year.
I'm not afraid. It's the wizard who should be afraid of me.
Our reporter Rishi Davda is at the Royal Festival Hall where the stars are arriving. So Rishi, does it live up to the hype?
Well, it's certainly got big shoes to fill. The musical debuted on Broadway more than 2 decades ago and has since come to the UK. Now, the film was actually greenlit back in 2012, faced multiple delays. We then had a pandemic, and once they did start shooting, we had an actors and writers strike. Well, finally, it's out, and stars Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo told me they can't wait to show the world their work.
Just overjoyed. It's been our little secret for a really long time, so to be able to finally share it with everyone is really, really lovely. We're very proud of it, so hopefully everyone else will be enjoying it too.
Wicked has such a loyal fan base, yourself included. Does that put a little bit more extra pressure on your shoulders when you're taking part in a project like this?
You know, I think it's not exactly pressure, but it's just sort of emotional fuel to keep the fans in our hearts every step of the way. You know, we were those fans, and we tried our very best to honor this the way we felt that it really deserved. And you know, it's been a part of our hearts every step of the way, and we've just kept them in mind with us, those fans, because we are those fans. Yeah.
I think there's like a little small piece of responsibility that we feel like we want to take care of it just as much as the fans want to take care of it. So, yeah,
not pressure, responsibility. Yeah.
We know you obviously for singing as well, and when some singers step into the acting world, they don't get the opportunity to kind of put both together. How nice is it to be able to do the acting but then have your heart in singing as well?
It's lovely.
It's
we
lovely.
love it.
Yeah,
we're
we're very
spoiled.
grateful.
Yeah. Very grateful to be able to do that.
How difficult is it not to give away secrets when you've already filmed 2 parts of it?
It is so
It's really hard, and people keep asking for them.
Yes, we've had the hardest time.
Like, we keep saying, well, you have to wait because we want to share everything. We know everything about what happened, but, you know, thank you for asking that question, because it's very hard to keep the secrets. Yes.
Wicked Part 1 is out this Friday. Part 2 has already been filmed and will be out around this time next year. Hopefully the premiere for that one is a little bit drier.
Oh, we're going somewhere dry now, Rishi. Thank you. Ed Sheeran says he didn't give permission to Band Aid to reuse his vocals on a new 40th anniversary version of Do They Know It's Christmas. The British star says his opinions on such songs and fundraising has changed. Here's Charlie Frost on what's behind the row.
It's Christmas time.
Since its first release in 1984, it's become a Christmas classic. Performed by an all-star supergroup including George Michael and Sting, it was written by Sir Bob Geldof and Midge Ure in response to the catastrophic famine going on in Ethiopia. And it did raise millions, but 40 years later, there's a feeling its sentiment is outdated.
I feel like Band Aid is a lot more damaging than it is beneficial to the continent.
British Ghanaian rapper Fuse ODG says he refused to be on the 30th edition of the Band Aid single 10 years ago.
For us, it's very important that we provide a balanced view of Africa where people see it as a place where they can actually go on holiday, invest. But because of Band Aid and initiatives like it, we've lost so much in revenue. We've lost in trillions.
The artist has collaborated with Ed Sheeran in the past, and now when it comes to Band Aid, the two are aligned. In 2014, Sheeran did appear on the 30th edition of the track. Now his vocal has been reused on a 40th anniversary version, something he says he wouldn't have approved if he was asked, because his understanding of the narrative has changed. And the star has been accused of playing the white saviour before, after taking part in these short films in Liberia in 2017 for comic relief. The advert was part of efforts that raised millions, and that's Sir Bob Geldof's argument against criticism of Band Aid. Telling New Zealand's One News over the weekend, this little pop song has kept hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people alive. Catchy or controversial or both, it's a Christmas classic some argue could be doing more harm than good. Charlie Frost, ITV News.
Now, still to come on the programme. What does Harry Kane think of his statue?
And over the next 12 hours, we can anticipate more sleet and snow. I will have more details and the full forecast in just a couple of minutes.
Well, do join me and Becky for that after the break. It's time for the weather now. As you can see, Becky is here. And the question on every child's lip across the UK, when is it going to snow all over?
I know, we are under so much pressure as adults, aren't we? So much pressure. When there's any hint of snow, it's when will it happen for us? Well, I have to say that there is snow around. This is the Kemdorms, and we are definitely going to be seeing really quite a wintry picture across many parts of the UK. Not for everyone, but certainly this is our first real taste of winter, because apart from the snowy stuff, it's really going to feel very cold indeed. We are going to be seeing a sprinkling of snow across some areas, even to lower levels. levels. But generally over the week, the main point about it is that it's going to be feeling cold with a really biting northerly wind. This is Ribble Head Viaduct in Yorkshire. As you can see, absolutely beautiful. Let's have a look at what's going on. Well, you can see that after a very quiet couple of weeks, we certainly have seen an awful lot of the cold stuff starting to flood in from the north. Now, we are expecting to see a really very cold picture, as I say, as that northerly wind really starts to take effect. And we've definitely got some systems there moving in. That's what's going to be giving us the mixture of rain, sleet and snow overnight tonight. So we're covering for some on the ground by tomorrow. So that cold air continues to flood in for the rest of the week. But even by the time we get to the end of the week, it's still cold, with that next system starting to move in from the west. And that could give us a spell of fairly wet and windy weather as we move into the weekend. So a brief milder spot before it turns cold again for next week. So, of course, we do have weather warnings in force, and those weather warnings cover a reasonable swathe of the UK. We are expecting to see, as you can see, snow and ice across many areas, particularly northern parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, North Midlands northward. So, yes, prepare yourself for a pretty chilly and rather wintry night. Let's get the detail.
Today, expect to see some heavy downpours all over the country. Heinz Beans sponsors ITV National Weather.
So let's get the detail then. Of course, it's going to be a cold and wintry week. An unsettled and cold story, snow and ice for some, but good sunshine at times as well. It's definitely not going to be a horrible week. In fact, for many, it's going to be absolutely lovely, perfect for getting out for a wintry walk with a bitterly cold wind, particularly felt down the eastern fringes. And as I say, snow showers at times. So at the moment, we've got this lump of stuff moving in from the west. It's along Atlantic weather fronts where it's cold enough, as you can see across the northern parts of the UK. This is where it's going to be falling as a mixture of sleet and snow. To the south, it's just too mild, I'm afraid. All those hopeful children out there, it's still just too mild. It is going to be falling as rain in the south, but a fairly unsettled picture and cold for pretty much everybody. Now, as we look ahead to the story for tomorrow, we do so with some beautiful conditions to start the day, and the snow and ice warning is in there really for much of the morning, just hangs in there to the north into the afternoon. Some lovely sunshine starting to kick in as well. Towards the south, though, a little bit more in the way of the cloud, and just look at that contrast in temperatures. Then you add on the effect of that really cold northerly wind that's coming straight down from the North Pole, and that is going to make it feel colder still, below freezing across those eastern areas. So really it will start to feel properly wintry, even though technically we are still in autumn. Then we jump ahead to the picture for Wednesday, and it's beautiful. As you can see, this is the snapshot for midday. It's cold and clear, and even the cold weather starting to tuck in then to the south.
Heinz Beans sponsors ITV National Weather.
I just want to give a little bit of hope to people in the south. We are watching a system potentially coming in Wednesday into Thursday. I will keep you posted. Just say that to the kids.
I'll keep everything crossed. Thanks very much. And finally, there's been many statues of famous footballers which have been ridiculed for how they look. But England captain Harry Kane proudly posed with his statue today when it was unveiled in East London, where he trained as a boy. The look-alike, though, is not without its own share of controversy, as Geraint Vincent reports.
Immortalised in Walthamstow, at one end of a sports centre at the club he played for as a schoolboy, Harry Kane's life story is spray-painted on the wall, and sitting on the bench in front of the mural, a statue of the man who scored more goals for England than anyone else.
I'm really impressed with it, actually. It's pretty cool to see, and yeah, it's quite humbling to see it here now and to know that there's going to be loads of kids walking past and hopefully being inspired, not just by the statue but the mural as well. I think it's a really incredible story of my life, you know, the hard work, and so yeah, I think it's really cool that, you know, the kids have somewhere to be inspired by.
Now, it's a subjective business, art, and some of the locals we spoke to today weren't quite as taken with the work as Harry was.
It's not a great statue, in my opinion. It doesn't look crazy like him. I could easily walk past it and think, who's that? Do you know what I mean? So
that's waste of money, mate. Yeah, it's shocking that. Do you think it captures his likeness at all? Or? Not at all, mate. Not at all. It cost £7,500.
Oh, gosh.
The statue does at least place the England captain firmly in the pantheon of brilliant footballers whose statues have caused some debate. In Kolkata in India a few years ago, they unveiled this attempt at the late great Diego Maradona. In George Best's hometown of Belfast, there stands this statue which even his most devoted fans struggle to recognise. And then, of course, outside the airport, which they named after Cristiano Ronaldo, there was this bust, which was eventually removed, reportedly at the request of his family. But look, in East London this morning, there was a clearly delighted local boy taking selfies with his statue. And as long as Harry likes it, that's surely the important thing. Geraint Vincent, ITV News.
Oh, what a lovely treat for the young fans. All right, that's all for now. Gamal's here with the latest after I'm a Celebrity. But for me and the whole of the Evening News team, you enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.